Welcome to this episode of the Xavier Files as a part of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast where we are chatting with the voice of Nina da Costa, Christine Webby. I'm JC.
And I'm Rod, and I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Christine.
Hello, everyone. Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you for joining us. You know, we've gotten to chat with a bunch of members of the cast so far, and we've been able to cross paths at events, and we're going to get into all that. But again, thank you for joining us.
This is exciting.
Some real quick housekeeping. Cyclops is Waiting for Me as our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men, the animated series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. We're on the other side of that now, where the first season of that is over with, even though we waited like 2.5 years or something to watch that. And we're going to be chatting with Christine's character and role in X-Men 97. So, it's chatting about. I was like, we're chatting with the character. So there may be some spoilers. If you don't want spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, come back. We always mention this, but you should just watch it. Everyone involved is part of the #1 rated Marvel show ever now, so you should just watch it.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, make sure you're following us on all of your favorite podcast services. Now, let's get into it. So, like we've said, everybody who's listening at this point knows that you're the voice of Nina da Costa, Sunspot's mom. But just to help paint a picture of the stuff that you've done prior to X-Men 97, what are some of the roles and projects that you're most proud of in your career so far?
So, my career has been a mix of projects, VO, TV, film. So there's all of that theater. I just go from project to project. I love all of them. I actually did some ADR looping as well. So, my most recent ones, I think I was cast for The Rookie. I'm season 5. Episode 14, and I had a blast doing that. I will be in the upcoming SEAL Team final season. Yes. I did a very cool project for Facebook Watch opposite Will Wheaton as well.
Nice.
Yes, I did the voice for this Brazilian AI. Her name is La Portia. They have projects that were really interesting to me. There is something that I consider till now like a highlight for me. I had the blessing of being cast for a Francis Ford Coppola's project. It was one of his personal projects, and it's called Distant Vision. It didn't get to be screened or just like very selected audiences around the world because it was a project that was personal to him. So I was cast in that, and just to have that chance to be, with the master, like really working with him, it was amazing. I feel really blessed for that.
Was that the one that I saw on your IMDb? You had received some nominations at some film festivals. Was that role, or was it a different role?
No. That was a different one. That was for Early Summer. It was actually a short film. And yes, I got a Best Supporting Actress nomination at the London International Film Festival. And that was very, very early on in my career, actually. I had just arrived in LA, and I was still studying at the Lee Strasberg Institute. And I got cast for that short film. And one day I just figured out that I had been nominated for this. And I was like, oh my God, this is it's exciting.
That's awesome, especially very early in your career in Los Angeles.
Yes.
A lot of people will come out here and, you're doing the waiting tables and stuff like that. But that's got to be a good feeling right at the beginning to have such a big hit like that. It
was inspiring, because it's in a way, this career has so many ups and lows, and we've been there. We have to deal with rejections, like we audition for many projects, and then when we get a win, it's nice. We have to celebrate. Not that it's like it doesn't define you, but certainly it gives you like gives you a little nudge, like okay, let's move on, and it's nice. It's nice to tell beautiful stories.
Well, let's get into the auditioning process for X-Men 97. What was the actual process for you on this one? And did you have any idea really what the role was at the time of the audition?
No idea. I had no idea. I'm very thankful because it took the pressure off. When they sent me the audition, when my agent sent me the audition, it was just like a regular project. And actually it was a very quick audition. So I just like, okay, I can do this. Nina had a different name for the audition. Right. So I couldn't figure it out. It was just like, it was out of the blue, this audition. They had sent me a code name like they do. And I think it happened to most of the cast too.
Yep.
They had this project that, some of them kind of figured out, but I didn't.
Do you remember what Nina's code name was?
I can't say for sure, but I think it was Anna.
Okay.
That's what I think it was. Yes, it isn't too far off. But yes, and at the audition I had, so the sides were like my son. He was traveling and I was just like, I just called him and I missed him. So, I was just like, oh, I miss you. Something like that on those notes. Yeah, it was very exciting. And then, of course, like a month after, I think, or 2 months after, I was traveling and because of the time difference, we were in Europe. My agent called and, agents, they don't often call you unless it's something like really cool happening.
Right.
So when I saw it, it was like 11 p.m. We were in Holland. And then I saw, oh my God, Sam called. Okay, must be happening. Let me call him back. So I called him back and he said, hey, Christine, you booked it. And I said, okay, I booked. Okay, great. A booking is always amazing. But what did I book? And he said, well, the last audition. And he gave me the code name again. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was really not understanding. And he said, well, this is for X-Men 97, Christine. And I said, oh my God, this is fantastic.
You're like, Sam, you buried the lead a little bit here.
I know. And then after that, there was a lot of jumping around, running around the living room. And it's just like happy because it's a legacy, right? And so to be able to have a cool character, an original character. This project has been going around for years, right? Since the very last episode. So there was a responsibility in that.
As far as like getting the news, some of the other voice actors like Isaac and AJ has said like they got the news and then they just couldn't say anything. Like AJ was like, I was in the booth doing another job or something, and then I just had to go home and tell my chihuahuas. And you were probably pretty early on in the process. So like, how was that like keeping the secret and getting the news?
Oh, that was, it's always, I think, the most difficult part, because when you have something that is so joyous and brings you so much joy, I think it's a natural part of us human beings that we want to share with someone, right? But of course, you can't, and I get it, and it's part of the whole thing. It only makes it more beautiful later on when you actually can talk about it. Part of that was actually, I was in a project with Guy, like doing completely something different. That's where I met Guy. And I'm quite sure that we were way into recording the episodes and everything. I didn't know that he was playing my son. And
great.
He didn't know also. And so afterwards, when we were able to start releasing, I think I saw a post he did on Instagram. And then I sent him a text message and I said, yeah, I can't believe you're playing my son. He said, are you playing Nina? I said,
that's amazing.
That's like, the universe just letting you know that you're in synchronicity with everything, because you'd already met your like good people, like talented people, and you were already working anyway.
And there was one day, I had just finished my session and the sound engineer actually told me, he said, oh, your son, right after I got into the studio and he told me, oh, your son was just here recording.
Oh,
even then, I had no idea. We didn't cross our paths. So it was magical. I do believe in, believing in the universe. And I do believe that the universe sent us signs. So definitely, I agree with you, Rod. I think that was a big sign.
It's such a fantastic story. I love that.
So Guy had recorded and you were going in to record, and at that point his name hadn't been revealed publicly, so you didn't have that moment of knowing each other yet, so you literally could have crossed paths in the studio and wouldn't have even known it's for the same project.
Yes, exactly. When we did the looping for Musica, we had already recorded. So at that point, I really did not know Guy.
Got it.
And when I was doing Musica with him, then yes. And then we could have talked about it. Like,
Right.
How exciting this is. Oh my God. What's ahead for us, but we didn't know.
So you mentioned this series having a legacy behind it. Had you been a fan or watched the original show before this casting process, or was that an after the fact thing that you started to immerse yourself in what that world was?
To be honest, for this specific show was a thing that happened afterwards. Of course, I was, grew up and, watching some of the Marvel's movies and all of that, and I knew the main characters. One of my favorite moments, to be honest, was when I actually got the script. Because, when I put my hands on the script and I got it printed and like beautifully, like traditionally, because I love doing that. I think there's, it's such, I don't know, I think it's an actor's thing, right? It's just, when you hold the script in your hands, it's so special. So when I was going through the pages and then reading the episodes, and then, there were some names like Wolverine and all of those. And, I think in one of my episodes, Captain America, that thing, like even now talking to you guys, I have goosebumps because it's such a dream come true.
Oh, of course. I mean, especially the mention of Captain America, because that was the first reveal for us, I think, was the mid-season trailer. Mm-hmm. And they showed that and all of us kind of like lost our mind of like, wait, what? So
exactly.
So you got to get that moment year prior to all the rest of us.
Maybe 2 years.
Right.
I think we started recording on 2022.
Yeah, so you got the full 2 years on it.
Yeah.
So something that stands out in 97 is having authentic voices for the actors and the characters they're playing. How does it feel for you having, you portraying Nina and Guy portraying Roberto, both being voiced by a Brazilian talent? Because that wasn't something that was a concern back when the original show aired.
Yes, that is very, very special. And, I'm sure for Guy as well, because, we are bringing our culture. It's important for us. And I think it's important for, let's talk about minorities and all of that. Just to have that sense of being included and to be, hey, it's okay. We are here and we can do this as well. And to have people actually involving us. And I think this sends a message to the entire world and also especially like for me right now as a Brazilian actress, growing up like so far away and watching all these shows. Like I said before, it's a dream come true. But when I think it's part of the legacy of X-Men, like talking about being accepted for who you are and, fighting to be who you are and that freedom. So I think it's very, very important. And I'm very thankful.
That's great to hear. So you get the gig, it's official, you find out what it is. What do you do from a process standpoint to prepare for it? And I'm going to ask the super nerdy question.
Yes.
Did you read any of Nina's appearances in the comics when you were preparing for the role?
Well, I did. I did do my research. And of course, Nina isn't just a few moments, right? You can't find a lot about her.
Yeah,
so,
I did some digging, and it looks like she only appeared in 7 issues, and most of those were in the 80s. So they're not easy comics to find.
They're not easy to find. But based on those, I mean, she is American, right? And Roberto's dad is the Brazilian one, right? So I think it's really cool how they kind of inverted it in this one. And they put talking about being able to bring a woman and in that, because she is in a powerful position and she is the one that is from Brazil. I think it's really important the way that they did it. But yes, to answer your question, I did some investigation and I found some things, and the things that I could use for what, was on the script for me this time, I did use. And yeah.
Great. So getting into the actual episodes, the first time we see Nina, it's not actually herself, but it's the demon version in the Fire Made Flesh Inferno-inspired episode. Did you get any preview from an animatic or a picture from the animation team of what that was going to look like? Or did you see it when it was on a screen for the first time airing? Was that the first time with it?
No, that was not my first time. I had to go back for some ADR, and that's when they showed it to me. But the episodes had already been completed. We had already finished. That's how it worked for me. And when I saw her for the first time, I said, oh my God, this is magical.
Right.
Because it's really cool. It's a cool moment. I think after receiving the scripts, I think that was the second most fantastic moment, yes. When you finally I had an image for her. And then that was the second part of it, because of course I couldn't say anything. So just to wait for that again, yeah, the whole thing, it's pretty awesome.
So we see Nina really in 2 specific episodes, Bright Eyes, Tolerance's Extinction. Even though she doesn't get a massive amount of screen time, she has some pretty iconic moments. So I would love if you could talk with us about doing that what we've effectively called the coming out scene, and any inspiration that you had around it, especially considering it happens in 1997 as opposed to that conversation, how it would play out in 2024.
Yeah. Very, very, very different circumstances. And I'd like to think that we are a little bit more evolved now, but that not necessarily, it isn't true in a lot of cases. We have a better understanding, but there is nothing really redeeming about Nina and the way that how she deals with the whole situation, right? I think I even had the pleasure of being in a Q&A with Bo, and Bo mentioned that as well. But I think we have to look at both sides, right? Because, of course, as an actress, I don't have to love my characters, agree with them, but I do have to understand them. And I think Nina comes from a different world and a different, like you said, a different generation. And dealing with that is, of course, we would expect for her to embrace him and to say, I've always known, and by the way, you're my son, and we should have talked about this before, and go for what you are, and I'm here to support you. And I think that's what we should expect and want. But I think people normally, they can deal with fear or love. And I think in Nina's case, she's just dealing with it with a lot of fear. The way I prepared for that character, I chose to really want the best for him. I want to protect him. I think I tell Jubilee, thanks for being there for him. Like a mom, I want the best for him. But I'm also scared of, him coming out. What could that mean? What could, maybe, I think it's a mother instinct to want to protect a son. And then we moved to the second scene, and that was a very difficult choice for me as well, even to read that, because I would hope for her just to, protect him, for her to protect him. But that's when I think, as an actress, I decided to just think about bringing my culture. Brazil can be very dangerous in certain moments, in certain, towns. And when something bad happens, you're just told not to resist. Because if you don't resist, at least you try to avoid something bad happening to you and to others. So that's what I chose to. I went through that direction. I know that it was not, that's not how it came across. I can say more how we will, develop. But until then, that's me as an actress thinking, how can I bring the best of me to this? And then let the story play.
I feel like that did come across. I mean, I'm a kid of immigrants too. Like, my parents immigrated from Korea, and, probably similar generation as Nina. And not as an excuse, but a reason. Like, there's a level of survival from immigrants, especially, I could only imagine if you had this empire, Costa's on the side of buildings there in that universe. And so she's, she, like you said, she showed at the beginning, she obviously cares for her son and accepted him herself. But then there's this thing, she's like, have you seen the color of your skin and our name? Things are already hard enough.
And I get it. It feels like a betrayal. And, it's not ultimately, I think. Look, I had so many people reach out to me. And I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of playing Nina, because so many people reached out and share their stories with me. And they said that scene, made me think about when, I came out, or when, and the reactions that I got and how it affected me. So it's very important to say that parents support, it's so important. Ever since you're a little kid, you're trying to impress your parents. You're trying to say, hey, it's the famous thing, hey, mom, look at me, I'm doing this. Hey, dad, look at me, I'm doing this. And then when you don't have that, you don't have that support next to you, it really can scar you for life. Now, can you imagine for something like this, where you really, it's your right. You want to be who you are, and you want to be able to, yell and scream to the entire world. And there is nothing wrong with that. So, to have someone else, but looking at their perspective, we have to have some compassion, because sometimes they are not able to see it through the lenses that we see. And
yeah. When that episode aired, the phrasing that I mentioned to a lot of people is, it was the perfect example of 90s whiplash, because in the 90s, it was that era where queer culture began to be a part of the conversation, but most people didn't know how to handle it. So you had this beautiful moment of I've always known, when I think the comment was like, yeah, our yacht burned down like 6 times in the Hamptons, something to that extent. Yeah. And your delivery was so perfect because it was trying to make him feel comfortable that I've known for a while and I've never judged you for it. But then it's immediately that jump back to like, well, we have to make sure the stockholders don't hear about it. And it was like, oh yeah, that's the thing that I'm like, as I'm describing it, I'm literally getting kind of goosebumps around it, that I don't know if somebody who's 15, 20 years old realized what we would have like dealt with had we come out when we were teenagers, you know?
Well, we had a few stories from the 90s and a good chunk of those kids didn't survive.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it was scary. Right now, it can't be considered selfish or anything. I think that the first thing that we go towards, oh, look at what a selfish mother. But it could also be her way of trying to protect her son, because back then you don't know how society will react, you know, and I know that is sad and we don't want that, and we would hope and think and pray for the world to be better than that.
I think that jumps perfectly over to the next episode with Tolerance is Extinction, because you have that moment of like, so what's next? And Nina is trying to do what at the time would be the best thing of set up a relief aid and things like that, and calls out Jubilee. And that was like one of those like, oh shoot moments I was almost not expecting, but it played out incredibly authentic. What do you think of how the rest of that episode played out, and the relationship, even in the stuff that you as a character weren't in the room for? Obviously you as an actor get to see.
Well, that's where, so the first scene, the one that we just talked about, of course you see a Nina, more compassionate Nina, it's like, oh hey, I've always known, but please let's keep this between us. And then it's a little bit uncomfortable, but then moving on, I think Nina is really going towards like, okay, this really cannot, get out of here. Right. And it's okay, but, let's keep this together. And I think I'm seeing like mothers see things, right? And I think they both said so beautifully, a mother knows. And I can see like the reaction in Jubilee and how she's reacting to the whole thing. Even the way that she enters, like at the very first moment that she gets in the building, and she looks like nobody raised like this is normal, right? So she already started like, having that kind of reaction. And then it culminates to really like, we are at the party, and then he, everything that happens afterwards. And I still think that, Nina was trying to protect him the best way she could, but it just doesn't come across like that at all.
It's kind of like what you said about, I didn't know it was this way in Brazil too, but like where my parents are from too, it was like, just don't shuffle anything up, so when the cops come, you're like, just do what they say, and we're going to get this over with, not probably fully understanding, those are like homicidal robots.
Exactly, exactly. But then again, I think she did the best she could in those circumstances,
or she thought at least, Yeah,
or she thought it. Exactly, because we are dealing with people, like I said before, I think there's a lot of fear in all her actions.
I remember even growing up, and a few of my other friends who were in different places, but in similar situations. Like, we were the only Asian family in like a white town, So my parents and stuff, they're always like, we can argue, but just not in front of the white people, because it's just, there's complexities to that. So I see part of that and like, just go with them, and then we'll sort this out later. I am kind of curious.
Let's keep it together. Let's keep it together,
I'm kind of curious because I've alluded to this and kind of joked about this in the past, but now we actually have you here. We didn't know that you were at the screening of that until I think John met you afterwards.
Outside when we were doing the picture, and Chris from Uncanny Experience is like, do you want to meet Sunspot's mom? And I was like, oh. That was my reaction.
So I was like, I thought it was kind of like funny in like an ironic sort of way, not funny for you necessarily, but also obviously you have thick skin because you're a working actress. Like, everyone else gets cheers when their big moments happen, and then Nina turns over her son, and the entire bar boos.
I know.
And you were there.
And it's so funny because I wasn't there for episode 7. I was just watching at home. I wasn't there. And for the episode 8, actually, because I didn't know that those parties were actually happening and all of that. So on episode 8, I don't know, I just asked Guy, and Guy, what are you doing? Why are you not there with us? So I just showed up for episode 8. And then, yes, I was booed big time. And that was such like, I think, oh my God, it's just like you feel it in your heart.
Yeah.
Because, I wanted to boo myself as well. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
But that means you did a great job, though.
Well, thank you.
You're such a likable person, and you made yourself very unlikable in that situation.
Yeah, I think the night that we watched it, there was that one guy who was very enthusiastic with what he was yelling. So...
Yeah. I was there, John. I remember.
She took him out back afterwards.
Right.
It's like, maybe should I leave, like, quietly and, not say, please, that I'm the one playing. Yeah, I think the message, I really hope people watch the scenes and just have the courage. All, the young people out there, who are really trying to master the courage to just come out to their parents or to, go through any difficult moment, just to have the courage to do it. Because each one of us, we have the right to live the life that we choose for ourselves. I learned this, each life is sacred and it's blessed, and we should be able to feel comfortable in our own skin. And if people are not with you, and so what? I mean, you know what I mean?
They weren't
I think
anyways.
That's the beauty. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of X-Men. We have such a huge family. And I consider this like a cast, creative team, crew, like all X-Men fans. We are a big family, and this project has been so special because it's different than a TV project or than a film that you kind of go through the film, you make friends while shooting it, and then, you hear like reviews or comments or people. At this project, you feel like people are there with you and they love the characters, and it is a big family.
I'm smiling because that was literally going to be my next question. I lived in this city for 11 years. I have never seen a project where weekly cast members were going together to events that were not like official PR moments that were booked by the studio. You were at the parade for Pride with Holly and like everybody showing up for Scum and Villainy events and stuff like that. Like it just feels different in the most positive sense.
Oh my God, it's a dream in that sense, because I don't know, that's what you want as a storyteller, is to be able to send messages. Like, I think that is the beauty behind what we do. It's like we are actors, yes, but we're not just reading a script. We are hopefully trying to create a character that people will empathize with and make people think about their lives and their decisions and how, something affected them. That's why we go to movies, because we want to have that feeling, right? And recognize ourselves in the characters. So that's what we got from X-Men. And especially that day at the parade, like to see how many people, like when they see the X-Men coming, there is a different strength in the way that they look at us and something, that there is a different power in that. I think X-Men gives that to people. One of the most beautiful stories I heard from someone at the cantina, from one of the fans of the show that he showed with me. And he told me that when he was at Iraq, and he had all the episodes with him, right, on the USB or something like this. He had the episodes, and then at night, people would go to his tent and they would ask him to actually see the episodes. They would, are you the guy with the X-Men files and everything? Can I see them? Look at the meaning of this. I mean, those guys, they were at war. They could be like blown up like the day after. And X-Men were there to give them courage. I mean, that story gave me so much. It inspired me, as a human being and as an actor. Like, look, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Love that. I can't imagine hearing stories like that when, you've been a part of that process. One of my favorite moments from our interactions together, because we've had, about a half dozen times where we've been in the same place and stuff like that, was actually sharing with you the digital version of your trading card and your reaction to it, of the shock of not knowing it existed.
Was it really?
I love
yes,
that.
John.
For those who don't know, there is a app called the Topps Marvel Digital Trading Card Collector, and there are 2 cards in this limited run set that showcase Nina, and I sent it to you, and you were just like, wait, what is that? It was so fantastic.
I know. I mean, that's so special. It's so cool. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. I would have never known. It's just one of those things that there is no way for me to know that.
Well, now what I'm waiting for is, so Topps does the digital cards. Upper Deck does physical cards, and I have a box of Hawkeye cards that hasn't been opened yet in my game room that I will open. Now I'm waiting for them to launch the physical version of X-Men 97 in like a year, because they're always way behind. I will make sure to let you know what Nina cards there are from that. So
please, John.
Yeah. Before we get to the last question, can we get from you in Nina's voice just our show title, Cyclops is Waiting for Me?
Cyclops is waiting for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then final question, what is the big takeaway you would want anybody who's watching the show to get from Nina as a character and your portrayal of them?
I think I want people to know that I think I mentioned this a couple of times during this podcast, but I think it's such an important message. Sometimes people don't know how to deal with circumstances. Sometimes people are very scared to deal with something that is new to them. And that has a lot to do with how they grew up, their circumstances, what, their parents taught them and all of that. And a lot of people deal with so many things in life with fear. We would hope that everybody would just look at a situation or any moment in life and just trust their hearts, trust in the universe, and love, have love in their hearts and their minds, and just act accordingly. But that's not how it happens. So that said, I think honor yourself, respect each other, be kind. Most of all, go after what you want for yourself. Have that strength, because all of us, in a certain moment of our lives, we deal with being accepted. And when people don't accept us, sometimes we are going with an open heart and we open up to people and we just say, this is who I am. And people, they are aggressive or they have a different, reaction than, the one that we were expecting. Just honor yourself, honor your truth, be who you are, and fight for the things that you want, because this is your right. So have the courage to be who you are, be your own person in your own skin, and be okay with that. It's okay to be different. We are all different in so many ways. That's how we were created. That's the message that I want to send. Just be who you are and have that strength.
I mean, you perfectly nailed the ethos of the X-Men and why we are fans of it. So, yeah. Christine, thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure to share all your socials in the links below in this. And for anybody who's listening, if you have thoughts, questions, etc., make sure you drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram post about this episode. We'll make sure to share those with Christine as well. And everybody, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube podcasts. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. This was amazing. I love talking to you.